going to start recording. And I have started recording. So, hello, I'm Caroline Wolf. Welcome to the Libraries Connecting Texas webinar for June. Kyle and I are both going to present today, and we're going to talk a little bit about the funding that's being received right now, the E-rate timeline, and some tools and July action items. We'll also hopefully answer all of the questions that you had when you registered. We gave you an opportunity to ask a question, and hopefully we'll be able to get that answered during the meeting. Just a little bit of business to take care of. If you have a question, we have a Q&A box where you can ask your question and we will answer the question. Also, if you need to speak, we can allow you to talk. Just raise your hand. But I think for now we'll get started on the agenda. So just to start about the summary of funding, 85% of the LCT applications submitted have been funded through Wave 7. Now, a wave actually went through right before this call, and we haven't had an opportunity to calculate all of the additional funding that's been received today, but we will be putting that information out probably in the newsletter or shortly afterwards. 12 applications are still waiting funding for July 1st. So far, $692,489.38 has been funded to LCT libraries for a total of $1.1 million in that's pre-discount. I'm sorry, that's requested discounted funds. So that's the $692,000 of $1.1 million. And then 65% of the funded applications are LCT, and that's all the libraries in Texas. For 2019, there are 27 libraries that still have not set their invoice mode. That means you haven't submitted an invoice. You either need to submit a bear or your service provider has not invoiced USAC for your discounts. So please do look at your bills. Kyle's going to talk about that a little bit, but do look at your bills and make sure if you are expecting your invoices to be discounted, that they're actually being discounted. We don't want to be caught last minute having to hurriedly try to submit a Form 498, which is something that's required to do a bear. So it's time to start thinking about that. We're getting really close to July 1st. And I know that there were a couple of people who were concerned because they haven't been funded yet for 2020. Don't panic. I know that you're concerned, but it's not something that is unusual, and it's not something that you should be concerned about. A lot of applications are still being reviewed. There were lots of applications for LCT libraries that were funded early this year, but that doesn't necessarily mean you should be worried about anything about getting funded. What will happen is if your application wasn't funded by July 1st, when it does get funded, you can receive your discounts that go all the way back to July 1st. It's just that they'll be delayed and you won't be able to invoice for them until you get funded and file your Form 486. So don't worry if you haven't gotten your funding yet. It doesn't mean you should be worried or panicked. Don't panic. A lot of people have been asking about the E-rate timeline, and just wanted to give you a little bit of the background. Here's a graphic about the E-rate timeline. It's really a seasonal program. We have the fall is coming up, and that's sort of the beginning of the cycle. You're going to start with your procurement soon for 2021, believe it or not. That starts, the Form 470 for 2021 will be available beginning July 1st. So If you don't have a multi-year contract and you're doing month-to-month services, or if your contract will be expiring at the end of the 2021 funding year, then you'll need to file a Form 470 for 2021. So that is that's starting soon. So once you go through your procurement, you apply for discounts, then your services start, and then you're invoicing. That's really sort of the cycle of how it goes, and it's sort of a 3-year cycle that happens all at the same time. Right now, we are in the summer. We are working with wrapping up the funding for the coming year, which begins July 1st. We are wrapping up the invoicing from the previous year, which would be 2019, 2020. That funding year ends June 30th. It's a cycle that starts July 1st and ends June 30th. And we're now starting to think about the procurement for the following year. So just think about it as a 3-year time period that you should be sort of thinking about last year, this year, and next year. It used to be that you had to have a technology plan before you started this cycle, but that's not a requirement anymore unless your state requires you to have one. You just need to start kind of thinking about what services you're going to be wanting to apply for beginning in 2021. But we'll talk about the Form 470 right now. So you're planning for your future technology. If you have a building that you're building, or if you are thinking about getting new equipment, this is the time to start thinking about it for 2021. You're going to have a new Category 2 budget. So if you previously applied for Category 2 funds, that slate has been wiped clean as of 2021, and you'll be starting a new budget cycle. So think about what you're going to want for 2021. If you need to increase your bandwidth, and if you need to purchase equipment in anticipation of increasing your bandwidth, those are some of the factors that you should be thinking about. If you are going to be needing to do a request for proposals, that's mostly for larger libraries or libraries that are going to be doing a large procurement. But we usually attach a document to the Form 470, and that's also called an RFP, so that can be a little confusing as well. Once you file your Form 470, I think most of you have now been through that process. You file a Form 470, you have to wait for 28 days, and then you evaluate bids and select a service provider. You've already done that for the 2020 funding year. This would be something you're going to be thinking about for 2021 at this point. You've just completed the Form 471 cycle for 2020. So you've prepared and certified your Form 471, and most of you have gone through your application reviews and inquiries. Some of you are still going through that process, and many of you have received a funding commitment decision letter. So that's kind of what we're going from right now, and this is called the winter-spring timeline, mainly because it's the Form 471 window usually opens around January, and it usually closes around at the end of March, or at least it has been for the past couple of years. This year it was extended because of the COVID pandemic, but we anticipate that moving forward, unless something crazy happens again, you should probably anticipate that you'll be applying for discounts around the same time every year. So the spring, you just completed your Form 471, you're getting your funding commitment decision letters, you're preparing for the next stage of E-rate, which is your services are starting. So July 1st is when services start. That means even though you have continuing services, because you're thinking about your internet access, many of you are using the same service providers that you did the previous year, but you are starting the funding year for July 1st. Someone did ask a question about getting your discounts secured for 2020, which, meaning you want to get the SPY discounts. So I recommend that if you are planning on getting discounted bills, that you contact your service provider. Many service providers send an automated email to you. CenturyLink does this, AT&T does this, Windstream does this. And it's sometimes it gets stuck in your spam filter. So you should probably look and check there if you use one of those service providers. They ask you the question if you're planning on doing bears or SPYs, and if you do plan on receiving discounts on your bills, it's important to fill out that information, because many of them will push back if you submit that past a certain amount of time. So this is the time to elect what method you want to receive your discounts, if you want bears or SPYs for 2021. I mean, sorry, 2020. So July 1st is when the services will start for 2020, and then June 30th is when they end for 2019. Once you receive your funding commitment decision letter, you need to submit a Form 486. Now, the Form 486 is the form that does two things. It lets USAC know that you are compliant with the Children's Internet Protection Act, and it also lets them know that they can start paying invoices that are submitted on your funding request. So that means if you elected to receive service provider billing, once you file your Form 486, then you can start with your July 1st bill, and you can get your discounts either through the BEAR process or through the SPY process. If you're doing the BEAR process, there are a couple of steps that you're going to need to complete. One of them is to acquire a PIN, and the other one is to submit the Form 498. That's a multi-step process. So it's important for you to let us know if you do know that you're going to be doing bears, because we will help you get through that process. It can be a little tedious. I know some of you have been struggling with it. So anyway, just some other tools. People have been asking about reporting tools as well, and how do I know what the status is of my form, and other things like that. So there are a couple of resources I want to share with you. One of them is the USAC website, and another one is actually the E-Rate Central website. So I am going to stop sharing my screen right now briefly. And I want to show you the E-Rate Central website, and then I'm going to show you the USAC website. Does anyone have any questions so far? If you do, please put them in the question and answer. Okay. So I am now sharing my screen. Hopefully, Kyle, can you see it? Okay. So this is the E-Rate Central website. It is eratecentral.com. There are some password protected features in here that not everyone has access to, but there are features that everyone has access to. And I just wanted to show you what some of them are. This state funding site or page, if you go to Texas, you can look and see what Texas has received in E-Rate funding. And this shows the Wave 7 funding for Texas. And it links to the and actually links to the USAC website. But you can download this information and look and see which libraries and which schools received funding in Wave 7. This is something that's available for all years on the USAC website. So if that's something that you're interested in, you should definitely check that out. We also have some other resources on our webpage. We have a page that talks about the Children's Internet Protection Act. The Texas State Library and Archives has a really good SIPA page, and we recommend that you check that out. But we also have some information on our website if you want to look at it. We also have some other educational information here on the E-rate process. This sort of explains the seasonal process again in sort of a timeline fashion. It shows you the types of things that you should be thinking about seasonally: the fall, winter, spring, and summer. Just to, in case you want something to quickly reference what you should be thinking about. Of course, I'm sure that you're used to us sending emails and letting you know what you should be thinking about. And I know that you don't want to think about E-rate all the time because there are so many other things that you're thinking about. But there are certain things that you should be thinking about. And then there's some more information about the different forms that are used in the E-rate process. If you would like to go and check that out, one of the things that is a really good thing for you to look at is the best practices for document retention, because you should be collecting all of the things that are associated with your E-rate in a file of some sort. A lot of people use binders, but you can just use a thumb drive or just a file on your computer. Just make sure you back it up, because it's important for you to maintain records for a period of 10 years after the last date to receive service. We have a newsletter that we send out every week. Of course, we've been sending it to you as well, but it's also archived on our website. So if you want to drill down into some of the links here, it's available here, or if you want to look at some of the old ones. And if you really just can't sleep at night and you want to read some of the old FCC orders and appeals, this is very interesting reading, not. So that's just some of the services that are available here on our website, some of sort of the resources. And you can look at your funding history and all of that stuff. On the USAC webpage, there are some other resources that are available, such as training. There are webinars. There are links to register for training. There is actually a series of online training that you can register for. Most of you who are contacts on your Form 471 receive the E-rate newsletter that's sent out by the Schools and Libraries Division once a week, the news brief. Often you will find in there that if they have a training coming up, it will be mentioned in the news brief. They'll also have some good information on what you should be considering or thinking about, or things that are about to come up. You can look at old webinars if you want. They've got them archived. And you see here, this last one that they had looks like it was in March. So it talked a little bit about the new budget tool that they have there, the C2 budget tool. But here there are previous trainings that you can watch. Eligible services for beginners. If you are new to the E-rate program, you can go and watch that. And you can look at the Form 470 and competitive bidding, preparing for the funding year. All of these are available for you to watch, and it's all on the USAC webpage. And to get there, it would be usac.org. So I am going to stop sharing again and take an opportunity to ask if there are any questions about the tools that are available for you. No questions. Okay.
I'd like to make a comment on the webinars that you just showed.
Mhm.
Um, as someone who has watched a number of those,
Mhm.
will say they are incredibly useful, in showing the exact process for a lot of these forms, at least in terms of navigating Epic. So if you are unfamiliar with Epic, it's definitely very useful uh, for that, among other things.
Thank you, Kyle. I've been doing E-rate for a long time, and so it's good to hear that when someone comes in and learns new things about E-rate, that the webinars are helpful. Um, it's important for you to learn more about E-rate, and so we actually do have our YouTube channel has all of our webinars that we've done available as well, so you can look at those as well. I'm not sure if all the instructional webinars are up there, but I will double check and make sure we put them. I think we have one on the Form 486, and we may have a couple of other ones that we've done specifically on specific topics rather than just our monthly webinar. We've done some instructional webinars as well. So these this is what we just recently went to, the USAC E-rate resources and tools. Actually, you can go to the entity download tool, the bin search tool. This is actually the bin search tool is kind of an older tool. Um, it's I think maybe it's been updated, but it's all of the legacy system bins from before EPC came along. But if you're ever trying to find a service provider's identification number, a SPIN number, that link will work as well too. So I'm going to just keep going through here. If you'd like a copy of our slides, we can send you that handout as well. We can send a PDF of our slides to you so that that you can go to those links. We're also, again, making this available on our YouTube channel. You can actually download a copy of your Form 471 on both the legacy site that we were just looking at, where the usac.org site, or you can also find that in Epic. The important one to look at here is to change or disable your applicant PIN. If you have a personal identification number and you don't know where it is and you need to get a new one to file a BEAR, you can go to that link and just deactivate your PIN and get a new one. See. I'll show you. So some of these links have changed. So if you had a bookmark for them, they just recently changed some things. So here's the PIN tool right here. It allows you to disable your old PIN if you want to, and you can change it. And these are for if you already know what your PIN is. If you don't have a PIN, you can always request one. I know that last year there were people who had difficulty with getting PINs because they, for one reason or another, they were delayed in getting to people. So people would request a pin, and then it would be difficult to find one. I mean, they were not. I don't know. They weren't showing up, and then you'd have to request another one. Okay. So that will be. I think that is it as far as that is concerned. Now let me put share my screen so that Kyle can. Sorry about that, y'all. Of course, it went all the way to the beginning. Okay, so Kyle's going to start talking about the July action items now, things that you should be thinking about for July. Kyle?
Thank you, Caroline. So as Caroline said, these are a couple of items that you will be needing to address now that we're approaching July. So the financial year 2020 is going to begin on July 1st of 2020. And a few things you'll need to do in order to ensure that you're filing and in order to ensure that things go smoothly for your financial year 2020 as it relates to E-rate. You will need to make sure that your Form 486 is certified no later than 120 days after the service start date or 120 days after the date of the funding commitment decision letter, whichever is later in that case. So if you have already received your funding commitment decision letter, then this would be your deadline would be 120 days after July 1st, presumably, since that's when your services should be starting. But if you haven't received the funding commitment decision letter yet, then that's fine as well. And you'll want to be sure to inform the service provider that is providing your internet that of the invoicing mode that you would like to go with. SPI, which is service provider invoicing billing, you'll want to notify them that that is going to begin on July 1st, so that so that the discounting can be reflected on the billing that you'll be receiving starting July 1st. For BEAR, which is Billed Entity Applicant Reimbursement, that's something that you'll be addressing later in the year after you've already after you've already paid the bills for financial year 2020. Either way, make sure that you're making copies of your bills each month and reviewing them. For the BEAR billing, you'll want to make sure that you have all of these together at the end of the year, because you'll be needing to file a BEAR form at the end of the financial year 2020. But for the SPI method, you'll just want to make sure that you are already receiving that discount on the bills that you receive. And you know what? I think I got a little ahead of Caroline there.
Oh.
I already.
You already? I was too slow in clicking.
No. I covered too much information on that one slide. But the slide before this was just going over the differences in the SPY and bear, which I covered on the previous one. So,
Okay.
in any case, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. That's okay.
Oh, can you go back to the
Yeah.
SPY? So, yeah, so as it indicates here, service providers are not going to be discounting the bill until the Form 486 has been certified and the notification issued in most cases. So you'll want to make sure that once you do receive your funding commitment decision letter, that you are first CBIS compliant, and then move forward with certifying that Form 486. Please reach out to us if you need any help with that. And as it says there, please notify them that you want that discounted billing to begin on July 1st if you are going to be going under the SPY method of invoicing. Again, with the invoices that you receive, you'll want to make sure that the bills are receiving the proper discount for your library. For example, given there is, if you are receiving an 80% discount in a rate, the discounted bill should only be 20% of the total share. And USAC may ask for verification that the library has paid the non-discount share before paying out an invoice. And then that brings us now to the bearer form, the Form 472. So for the bearer form, and I've already been working with some of you in the past month or so in setting you up to file a bearer, which is the Form 472. And while there is a little bit of setup for this, this is something that once you have it in place, both the bear pin and the Form 498, you can use those for subsequent funding years as well. So part of filing a bearer will be getting a bearer pin that is associated with yourself and with your library. Even before that, there is going to be a Form 498, which we'll go over in a second. But at least with the bear pin, we have a link there that provides a template which you can fill the information corresponding to yourself and to your library into, and then provide to EPIC, provide to the Customer Service Bureau with USAC through a customer service case in EPIC. And then they would email you a PIN to the email address associated with your account within the next several days there. If you do go through this process, be sure to check your spam and junk folder just to make sure that the email did not get misdirected there, because that does happen sometimes, and we want to make sure that you're able to get everything you need from USAC.
Something I'd like to add about that as well is when you are when you're creating your template information, be very careful about the spaces that you put in there. Make sure that there are no extra spaces and that the information in there is correct. Because I was told at the Texas USAC training that sometimes what happens is that somebody will submit an email address, but the form has an extra space in there, and when they copy and paste it into their system, there's an extra space, and so it doesn't it doesn't get to where it needs to be because it's actually an error. There's an error in there. So be careful when you are filling out that form and make sure that you don't put any extra spaces or characters in it.
That is really great advice, because it's an Excel sheet. So essentially they'll just be copying and pasting whatever you put in there. So just like Caroline says, be very careful, um, and accurate with that. Um, that brings us now to um, the point at which a bear form can be filed. Some of you who have not been under the SPY method for the financial year, funding year 2019, are going to be filing bear forms for funding year 2019. And you can file that bear as soon as the form